Do you really think you know the truth about my family? You don't even know the half of it. Those were the words Michael Carter whispered, his voice raw with anger and betrayal. For years, he had lived in a web of lies, spun by the very man who should have protected them, his own father. But now, after watching his son Ethan retreat into a silence so deep, it seemed permanent, Michael was finally ready to confront the darkness that had haunted their lives. The mansion that once echoed with laughter had become a prison of secrets, pain, and broken trust. And the clock was ticking. Every moment lost was a moment stolen from a child desperate to be heard. What would you do if your own blood became your greatest enemy? How far would you go to protect the fragile hope of a family torn apart by betrayal? Stay with us, because the shocking truths uncovered will leave you breathless, and the choices made will change everything. This is not just a story of silence. It's a fight for love, justice, and redemption. Brace yourself, the real story begins now. In the heart of Beverly Hills, the sprawling Carter estate loomed silently beneath a clouded sky, its grandeur swallowed by a silence so thick it felt almost suffocating. Within those walls lived 7-year-old Ethan Carter, a bright boy whose voice had been stolen from him 2 years ago, since his mother Grace had vanished without a trace. Michael Carter, Ethan's father and the mansion's sole occupant besides the staff, sat alone in the vast, leather-lined study. His hands trembled as he stared at the empty fireplace, mind spinning with the helplessness that had plagued him for 2 long years. He had hired 23 caretakers, specialists, therapists, each one giving up when Ethan refused even the smallest sign of communication. That morning, a call arrived from the agency. Mr. Carter said, a soft voice on the phone, "I believe I can help. My name is Claire Bennett." Michael was skeptical. The name was unfamiliar, but something in Claire's calm, steady tone gave him a flicker of hope, a fragile light against the dark. Claire's arrival that afternoon was like a breath of fresh air wrapped in mystery. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with soft brown hair neatly pinned back. But what caught Michael's attention and curiosity was the delicate veil she wore draped to cover the right side of her face. She explained without prompting that a scar there made her self-conscious. Michael nodded. Appearances hardly mattered anymore. As she stepped into the vast hallway, Claire's gaze swept over the elegant portraits and expensive decor, her eyes absorbing every detail as if memorizing a map. When she asked for Ethan by name, Michael was startled. He hadn't mentioned his son's name yet. Claire's answer was simple. The agency had shared some basic information. It was an unusual start, but Michael's desperation outweighed his suspicions. The moment of truth came when Claire followed Michael to Ethan's room. The boy sat curled in a corner, clutching a worn teddy bear, his eyes hidden beneath a curtain of dark hair. The room was littered with toys and half-finished drawings, but the air was heavy with absence, a joy drained away. "Hi, Ethan," Claire said softly, kneeling down at a respectful distance. "My name is Claire." Ethan didn't react at first, but Claire noticed the faintest flicker of recognition in his gaze, especially when her veil brushed lightly against her cheek. She pulled out a small, ragged teddy bear from her bag, an echo of Ethan's own, and hummed a lullaby. The melody was simple but hauntingly familiar. Ethan's head twitched slightly. The silence was trembling at its edges. Claire then noticed a stack of drawings shoved beneath the bed. Carefully, she pulled them out. Ethan's crude sketches portrayed a family stick figures labeled with names. The mother figure was heavily crossed out. Claire's heart clenched at the raw pain evident in the scribbles. "Do you like to draw?" she asked gently. Ethan's almost imperceptible nod was the first communication she had gotten. She picked up one of the pictures and showed it to him. "Is this your family?" For the first time in years, Ethan nodded with a faint glimmer in his eyes. Claire whispered, "Do you miss them?" Ethan's head dropped and the teddy bear squeezed tighter. A silent tear traced down his cheek. Claire reached out slowly, letting Ethan decide whether to touch her hand. Hesitant but curious, he extended a tiny finger, barely grazing her skin. That moment of trust was monumental. Outside, Michael listened at the door, hope blooming cautiously. When Claire emerged, she told him, "He let me stay with him for a few minutes." It's a breakthrough, some progress. That night in the modest servants' quarters, Claire confided in Mrs. Collins, the longtime housekeeper, about her decision to take the job despite the daunting challenges. "Why would you risk everything?" Mrs. Collins asked, eyes filled with concern. Claire's answer was simple but powerful. "Because I've seen children like Ethan before. I believe he can heal, and I won't give up." The next morning, Claire prepared Ethan's breakfast exactly as Mrs. Collins described: warm milk with chocolate and toast cut into perfect triangles. When Ethan came down in his school uniform, he paused at the kitchen doorway, watching Claire with a curiosity that hadn't been there before. She smiled, pouring milk into his favorite blue dinosaur mug. Ethan sipped cautiously, then blinked in surprise. Everything tasted just right. He nodded ever so slightly, a silent approval that made Claire's heart leap. Michael noticed the subtle change watching as Ethan actually ate the whole piece of toast, something he hadn't done in months. "The kids respond when they feel understood," Claire explained. Michael nodded, a fragile hope stirring inside him. Later, Mrs. Collins showed Claire the attic where remnants of Grace's belongings were carefully stored, boxes filled with clothes, letters, and photographs. Claire sifted through them, finding a letter addressed to Ethan, dated just a week before Grace disappeared. Reading aloud, Claire's voice trembled. "My dear Ethan, if you're reading this, it means things didn't go as I hoped. But please know I love you more than anything, and I never left by choice. Bad people tried to keep me away, but I promised to find a way back to you." Claire's eyes filled with tears as she folded the letter gently. This was the key. Grace hadn't abandoned her son. She'd been forced away. When Ethan discovered the boxes, he picked up a photo of Grace smiling on a beach, his tiny fingers clutching it like a precious treasure. His face softened for the first time in years. That night, Claire heard a soft sound coming from Ethan's room. She found him sitting up holding the photo, and the teddy bear, tears glistening in his eyes. "Claire?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Yes, Ethan, I'm here. Mom," he said, his voice cracking. Claire sat beside him, heart pounding. She leaned close and shared a secret. "Sometimes when we miss someone, they miss us too, even if they're far away. And sometimes people have to leave, not because they want to, but to keep those they love safe." Ethan's wide eyes absorbed every word. For the first time in 2 years, a fragile smile touched his lips. Dear viewers, I hope this first part has pulled you into Ethan's silent world and Claire's brave journey. The story will continue, diving deeper into the secret struggles and hope that bind this family together. But before we move on, I want to ask you, what would you do if you were in Claire's shoes? Risk everything to help a broken child, or walk away to protect yourself? If this story moved you, please show your support by liking this video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your encouragement means the world. The morning sun filtered weakly through the heavy drapes of the Carter estate, casting long shadows on the polished floors. Ethan's silence had begun to crack, but the true battle was only just beginning, not with the boy, but with the ghosts lurking in the family's past. Claire sat quietly in the grand living room, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the letter from Grace. The truth it revealed had set off a chain reaction inside her, an urgent need to peel back the layers of secrecy suffocating this family. But there was more beneath the surface, and Claire knew it would take every ounce of courage to confront it. Her instincts proved right the moment Richard Carter, Ethan's grandfather, made his imposing entrance into the mansion. Tall, silver-haired, and exuding an air of cold authority, Richard's eyes locked onto Claire with a piercing scrutiny. He extended a hand, but his smile was thin, calculated. "Claire Bennett, isn't it? I've heard quite a bit about you," he said, his voice smooth but chilling. Claire's heartbeat quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "Mr. Carter." Michael appeared behind his father, the tension between father and son palpable. "Dad, please give Claire a chance. She's been helping Ethan in ways no one else could." Richard's gaze hardened. "Helping? That remains to be seen. This family has been through enough chaos." Claire felt the weight of his suspicion. It was more than personal dislike. It was a warning, a barrier she would have to break through. That afternoon, as Michael left for work, Claire prepared herself for what was coming. She wasn't just fighting for Ethan's voice. She was fighting for the truth buried under decades of manipulation. Her first move was to seek out Dr. Anderson, the family's trusted lawyer. The office was tucked in an aging building, downtown, sterile and uninviting. When Claire revealed the letter and her suspicions, Dr. Anderson's demeanor shifted instantly. His eyes narrowed, lips pressing into a thin line. "Grace didn't leave because she wanted to," he said quietly. "She was forced out." Claire listened as he recounted a harrowing tale. Richard Carter, wielding his power and influence, had orchestrated a campaign to destroy Grace's reputation. False evidence, manipulated witnesses, threats, anything to force her away from the family and silence her. Claire felt a surge of anger, but pushed it down. The stakes were too high. Back at the mansion, she was not alone in sensing the storm. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. A woman with sharp features and cold eyes stepped inside, introduced herself as Amanda, Michael's cousin, she claimed. But Claire immediately sensed something off. Amanda's smile was too perfect, her gaze too calculating. When Michael left the room, the woman's mask slipped. "You're playing a dangerous game, Claire," she hissed. "Richard won't tolerate interference." The threat hung heavy in the air, a chilling reminder that Claire's every move was watched. Yet as fear clawed at her resolve, Claire's heart hardened. She had promised Ethan she would fight for him no matter the cost. That night, as Ethan lay asleep, Claire sat by his bedside, her mind racing. The child who had once been so full of life was now a fragile ghost of himself. But somewhere beneath the silence, she knew a spark remained, one she had to nurture. The next day brought a breakthrough. Michael confronted Claire with questions. His father's interference had planted seeds of doubt deep within him. Could Claire be trusted? Was this truth or another deception? Claire's voice was steady but impassioned as she laid out the facts, the letter, Dr. Anderson's revelations, the threats. Michael's face twisted with pain and confusion, torn between loyalty to his father and the desperate hope to save his son. In that moment, Michael's internal battle became the story's heartbeat. Could he break free from the shadow of his father's control? Could he embrace a truth that threatened to unravel everything he knew? Meanwhile, Ethan's world continued to shift. One afternoon, Claire found him in the garden, eyes distant yet searching. She knelt beside him, gently offering the photo of Grace. Ethan's fingers trembled as he clutched the image. "Mom," he whispered, voice barely audible. "Yes," Claire replied softly. "She loves you, and she's trying to come back." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes, but so did a flicker of hope. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the mansion felt less like a prison and more like a battlefield, where love, fear, and truth collided in a silent war. Dear viewers, this chapter has plunged us deeper into the Carter family's tangled web of secrets and threats. Claire's courage stands against powerful forces, and Michael's struggle between loyalty and truth reaches a fever pitch. Ethan's fragile hope grows brighter, but danger looms close. Now I want to ask you, if you were Michael, faced with the choice between defending your father or believing in the woman fighting for your son's future, which path would you choose? Your thoughts matter to us. Please share your answer in the comments below. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to like and support the video. Your encouragement keeps this story alive. The early morning sun cast long, golden streaks across the manicured lawns of the Carter estate. The mansion that once felt like a fortress of isolation and sorrow now stirred with a fragile hope. Within these walls, the final chapter of a long and painful journey was beginning to unfold, a chapter defined by courage, truth, and the powerful bonds of family. Michael Carter sat rigidly in the grand library, facing his father, Richard Carter. The air between them was thick with tension, suffocating even the vastness of the room. Between piles of documents and old letters lay the undeniable truth, a web of deceit and manipulation, carefully spun by Richard to tear apart his own family. Richard's face was pale, his usual commanding presence dimmed by the weight of exposure. "You accuse me of destroying everything we've built," he growled, his voice barely masking desperation. Michael's eyes were steel. "You destroyed Grace's life, shattered my son's childhood, and almost broke this family beyond repair. But today that ends." Claire Bennett stood quietly at Michael's side, her eyes never leaving Richard's. For months she had risked everything, her reputation, her safety, to bring this truth to light. And now the moment of reckoning had finally arrived. Richard swallowed hard but refused to look away. "I only did what was necessary to protect the family's legacy." Michael shook his head. "Protecting a legacy doesn't mean destroying lives. You used lies, threats, and manipulation to force Grace away and silence Ethan. That's not protection, that's cruelty." Claire stepped forward. "Your power ended the day you tore a family apart, but the truth has a way of healing wounds that money and fear never can." Richard's jaw clenched as the evidence was laid bare. Falsified documents bribed witnesses and carefully planted rumors. The magnitude of his actions could no longer be denied. Outside the mansion, Ethan played in the garden, a photo of Grace clutched tightly in his small hands. The boy who had been lost in silence for so long was slowly returning to life, laughing, speaking, rediscovering the joy of childhood. When Grace finally stepped through the front door, the air shifted. Her eyes scanned the room, and the years of absence melted away in an instant as Ethan ran into her arms, breaking a silence that had lasted too long. "Mom," Ethan whispered, his voice fragile, but filled with love and relief. "I missed you so much." Grace held him close, her tears soaking into his shirt. "I never stopped loving you, Ethan. Every day I fought to come back." Michael stood nearby, overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, relief, sorrow, and gratitude. Turning to Claire, he said, "You saved my son, and you saved this family. Thank you." Days passed and the Carter household began to heal. Grace reclaimed her role as Mother. Ethan's laughter filled the halls once again, and Michael found peace in the truth. Richard, humbled and broken by the confrontation, surprised everyone by asking for forgiveness. "I was wrong," he admitted quietly. "I thought I was protecting you all, but I only caused pain. I hope someday you can forgive me." Grace's response was gentle yet firm. "We all make mistakes. What matters is how we move forward." But forgiveness was only the beginning. Claire gathered the family one evening to share news that filled the house with joy. She was expecting a child. This announcement wasn't just about new life. It was a symbol of hope, renewal, and the unbreakable spirit of a family rebuilt. Ethan's eyes sparkled brighter than ever, his laughter ringing clear and true. The future was no longer uncertain, but full of promise. One quiet evening, beneath the sprawling oaks of the estate, Claire sat with Ethan and Grace. "You're so brave, Ethan," she whispered. "You taught us all what it means to hold on to hope." Ethan smiled, his voice steady. "I learned from you, Claire. You never gave up on me." Grace squeezed Claire's hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You're family now, more than ever." Michael joined them, his gaze sweeping over the scene. "We're stronger because of truth, because of love." As stars began to twinkle above the Carter, family knew their story was no longer about silence and secrets, but about healing, courage, and unbreakable bonds. Dear viewers, thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of pain, courage, and redemption. Claire's bravery, Michael's awakening, Grace's enduring love, and Ethan's resilience show us all the power of hope and truth in the darkest moments. Now I want to hear from you. Which part of this story moved you the most? Was it Claire's fearless fight, Michael's struggle with loyalty, or Ethan's triumphant return to voice in life? And if you had to give this story a title, what would it be? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please comment number 3 to show your love, number 1 if you think it could be improved, or number 2 if it was just okay. Let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing from our global community. Don't forget to like, share, and support this story. Your support means everything to us. Thank you for watching. Until next time.